Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. Never have to cut you out like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they feeling strange. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, powered by Blue Wire. Shout out to the new company. My name is Michael-Shawn You guys can follow me on whatever Elon Musk is calling that app these days. My @ name has not changed. MIKEDUGAR. Thank you for the love and support on there. Also, make sure you follow us on Instagram. Seahawks Man-to-Man is the name of the tag on Instagram, or handle tag. You know what I mean. Same thing on TikTok, Seahawks Man-to-Man. That is man, the number 2 man. Last but not least, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and like on YouTube. Seahawks Man-to-Man is the name of that channel as well. Tag, handle, channel. It's all the same stuff. Just hit the buttons, folks. Chris, go ahead and talk to him.
What is going on, everybody? It is your boy, Christopher Kidd. You can follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206, and that's CKid206.
All right, we have our midweek episode coming to you after Chris and I have watched the film. Also, later in the show, we're going to holler at my man Colton Pouncy, who covers the Lions for The Athletic. Obviously, Seahawks-Lions coming up week 4, Monday Night Football in Detroit for the umpteenth year in a row. That should be fun. But before we get to that, Chris and I are bringing back our One Big Thing segment. We've been doing this for the last couple of weeks. Just giving you something after watching the film. You know, we don't want to skip all the way to Detroit in the middle of the week or any opponent upcoming without at least giving you what we thought after diving in to the tape. It's much more revealing. Our hot takes maybe can cool down a little bit, or in my case this week, they're heating up, baby. It's heating up after watching the film. And that, folks, is what's called a tease, because Chris is actually going to go first with his One Big Thing after diving into the tape of Seahawks-Dolphins, a 24-3 win for Seattle to keep Seahawks and Mike McDonald unbeaten at 3-0.
Well, you said it. One big thing. I am going to kick things off as I want to look at the defense. I wrapped up the film on the defensive side of things, and it stood out the last couple of weeks, but then Mike brought it up on the latest episode towards the, I don't remember when, but he basically talked about how the DBs are doing a really good job of playing sticky coverage. And when you watch the film, you see a lot of that sticky coverage. And then you look up their stats and it backs it up. It's not as if you're seeing things. These guys are doing a really good job. And I'll be honest, Denver, week 1, I don't know if our listeners could name the starting lineup for the receivers. Probably not. All I know is Cortland Sutton, and I forget the rest. Cool. They did a good job on him. Week 2 against the Patriots, we did that exercise. Mike caught me during the show with Nick Cosmider, who covers the Patriots for The Athletic.
No, that's Chad Graff, Patriots.
Excuse me, Chad Graff. My apologies, Chad Graff. Nick covers the Broncos for The Athletic, but Chad Graff covers the Patriots for The Athletic, and he caught me off guard. He said, Chris, man, can you name any of the receivers? I got one receiver. And then I kind of mentioned Jalen Polk towards the end, but nonetheless, the Seahawks have gone up against receivers that are not household names, not big-time dudes that are dominant, or, oh, he's coming to town, or you're going up against him. That'll be a fun matchup. Week 3, kind of the same thing. And not to mention, oh, yeah, they don't have their quarterback, because Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have been a problem in the NFL for the last few seasons. But when the backup quarterback comes into Seattle, Skylar Thompson, the Seahawks were able to dominate, and you guys saw what happened. It was a how do I put it? It was a very boring ass whooping. How about that? It wasn't too exciting. The Seahawks just beat them from the jump. But one thing that stood out to me after going back and looking at some of the stats was through 3 games, you look at Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, and Trey Brown, they've all been really good against their matchups. So Devin Witherspoon through 3 games, he's been targeted 15 times, allowed 7 catches for just 40 yards, 0 touchdowns. As you guys have noticed, they haven't given much up in the red zone. Against the Dolphins, didn't give up a touchdown. The Dolphins had an opportunity to score, shut that down. The defense was pretty phenomenal in stuffing the run there. And then when they were forced to pass, the Dolphins couldn't execute. And the Seahawks were playing solid coverage. Devin Witherspoon goes over and makes an incredible play. Ball was a little overthrown, but nonetheless, everybody did their part, and it was a suffocating defense. And then you look at Tariq Woolen through 3 games. He's been targeted 11 times and only allowed 4 catches and also has an interception. And then you go to Trey Brown, who subs in, especially when they want to do 3 safeties or they have multiple different looks. Trey Brown has been targeted 9 times, given up 5 catches and for 69 yards. So when you hear those numbers and when you've seen these games, these dudes are doing a phenomenal job of just staying in front of their defenders or offensive players and making it tough for them to find any space. The quarterback's not able to make the throw. And again, as I mentioned, they're not going up against Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Terry McLaurins, give another receiver. Let's see, Debo Samuel, who's all banged up. But what they are doing is whoever they're facing, they are handling business. And that is, I think, a really good sign. And I think that builds confidence, right? If you're locking down the dude you're supposed to lock up, and then it comes to a game against the Lions that's coming up on Monday Night Football, you are feeling as a defensive back that, you know what, we've been doing our damn job all season. What's going to change now? Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown, all-pro type talent. He's going to be a damn challenge for Spoon. He's going to be a challenge for Trey. He's going to be a challenge for Reek. But I believe these dudes are definitely confident that they can go out there and really make things difficult for the Lions offense. Now, on the D-line, that's going to be quite interesting, especially when we don't know the updates for Byron Murphy, who had a hamstring injury in the game against why am I drawing a blank? Oh, my goodness. Who they just play, Mike? The Dolphins. And then also, you got to think about Leonard Williams, who also got banged up in the ribs area. Is he going to be available? Because right now, the D-line and DBs are working hand in hand and getting pressure. And I remember against the Dolphins, this is the play where Skylar fumbles the snap and loses, I think, 10 yards. But it's shotgun play here. The Seahawks, they're showing blitz. I believe Rayshon Jenkins is up close to the line, and he ends up rushing in. In this scenario, they only send 5, so it's not really a blitz. It's a pressure, 5-on-5. And Draymond Jones, he just has his way with the left tackle. And Skylar's trying to find some space. He fumbles the football. And then when you go back and watch that play, the DBs do such a phenomenal job of covering their man. And it's a zone coverage, but everywhere that Skylar will want to throw is blanketed. There's really no room. There's nowhere for him to find an outlet. He just can't, because the Seahawks did a really good job of bringing Rayshon, and then Mike always talks about winning your one-on-ones. Well, in this scenario, Draymond was able to win his one-on-one, and there was nowhere to throw. And everybody is just eyes on the QB, and Skylar is in panic mode, dropping back, fumbles the football, and it's a sack fumble forced by Draymond. That's the type of play that this defense has been doing pretty much all season. But that play really stuck to me. I was like, man, they did a really good job. Again, they showed Rayshon showing up at the line of scrimmage, and they dropped into a zone, and it was just really cool to watch. Just everyone blanketed. Tyreek covered, Jalen Waddle covered, running back covered. Again, no space for Skylar to make a play. He just had no room at all. And then another one that stood out to me was after, unfortunately, that Skylar got beat down so much, they ended up bringing in the 3rd string quarterback, and that's Tim Boyle. And it was 4th and 3, and the Seahawks ran man. And this play might have worked, but it didn't. And again, the Seahawks did a really good job of blanketing everybody. Rayshon was lined up over Jonnu Smith, that is, the tight end. And then you had Jeff Wilson, who was guarded by, I want to say, Terrell Dodson. You had Trey on Tyreek, or maybe it wasn't Trey, actually. Yeah, it was Trey on Tyreek. And then you had, I believe at the top of the screen during that play, you had Witherspoon on Waddle. But nonetheless, these guys man up. Reek is on Berrios, which is probably a win 9 times out of 10. 10 times out of 10, I think Reek's going to win that matchup every time. But the route ended up being too close. I think Jalen Waddle was too close to Berrios because he ran a slant while Berrios did a curl, and they were on top of one another. And Tariq Woolen just sticks his hand out, knocks the pass away, and he's just standing over Barrios like, really? That's what you tried on me? You guys are trying a curl route? I'm right here. And again, I think maybe Waddle might have screwed that up, running too tight next to Barrios, but nonetheless, solid pressure. And then the DBs were right there. There was no room for Barrios to make a play, and Tim Boyle tried to force it in there, but there's no space. They did a really good job of locking up and man coverage. And again, against the Dolphins, they did a phenomenal job of just blanketing those receivers. And that was something that stood out that I was like, okay, yeah, that is a good point, Mike, when you talked about on the pod earlier this week about how the Seahawks have just been nails covering receivers. And again, on Monday night, they'll get their biggest test against the Detroit Lions because I'll be honest, Amon-Ra St. Brown has had his way with the Seahawks the last 2 games he's played. He's at over 100 yards in each of those games. He had a touchdown, so I expect him to try to feast on the Seahawks. And I think you might have mentioned it, Mike, last year or maybe a few years ago on the pod that he took it personal. That is, I'm talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown, that the Seahawks drafted D. Eskridge over him, and he was able to name all the players drafted before he was. And I think he's probably going to want to stick it to the Seahawks yet again. I know it's a whole new regime, but it's still the Seahawks at the end of the day that didn't draft Amon-Ra St. Brown. So this will be a really good test for the Seahawks DBs to go out and show that, yeah, we've been playing really solid coverage against receivers that aren't the best of the best, but now we're going up against an all-pro type receiver. And they got Jameson Williams, who has come onto the scene and been a phenomenal asset to the Lions offense. So that is my one big thing after watching the Seahawks defense against the Miami Dolphins after that ass kicking on Sunday against the Dolphins.
Yeah, the to quantify, put a bow on that. Jalen Waddle had 4 catches for 26 yards against the Seahawks, and Tyreek had 3 catches for 40 yards. So not a lot of production there. That's 7 catches for 66 yards. Tyreek had a couple 17-yard catches. They basically got their explosives on the same type of route, little end breaker against cover 3. Which, if they had 2, that would have been an interesting battle because that's a tough play for the Seahawks to defend. Yeah, but they've been nails. Best cornerback trio in the league through 3 weeks. I do not have as positive a one big thing after watching the film. And at first I was like, well, that's no fun. Then I was like, well, it's real. So my one big thing is the offensive line, particularly in the run blocking. I know the pass blocking is under scrutiny, but the run blocking is what concerns me a little bit because just pass blocking is tough, as is. You're going backwards. The athletes that you're trying to block are just freak athletes. It's a really tough position. The Seahawks earlier this week posted a video where they it's one of those funny things they do after practice where the guys grab their smoothies coming off the field and they look at the screen and there's a question and they have to choose an answer. And this week the question was, what's the toughest position to play? And everyone can probably agree it's quarterback for sure. But all the old linemen, including George Fant, was like, yo, it's tackle. Clearly it's tackle. And all the DBs were like, obviously it's DB. The answer is DB after quarterback, but man, tackle is right there. Having to go backwards is tough, man. It's just really, really tough. But what's troubling when I watched the tape was how much they struggled in the run game blocking. Because then you're going forward. Physics are on your side. You're moving someone off the ball. And I actually think Ryan Grubb's run stuff is actually pretty cool. Also last week, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I talked about how actually this might have been just our last show, that Ryan Grubb probably needs to change the point of attack. If they have some issues with the run blocking with the linemen in particular, all right, cool. Make somebody else the key block. Make it, a tight end. Make it, Charles Cross, who's a really good blocker. Make it a receiver, which can get a little dicey, but you can do it, particularly if you're going to be in 11 personnel. And on top of the O-line struggling on Sunday, everybody else kind of had their issues too. Like there were a couple plays where it springs if Jackson gets his guy, gets the nickel or the safety. It was a couple where, or at least one where LaVisca just loses to the nickel, and he goes down. Those are the type of plays where that's really concerning because you got to hang your hat on something. And right now, it's the Seahawks offense is trending towards being like the last couple years where you're hanging your hat on Geno, just throwing it all over the yard. And if you don't have pass pro, everybody knows how that story ends. We've seen that, you know. But where I thought they would probably be better is like, all right, cool, going backwards is tough. Can you move guys off the ball in the run game? And there were just so many plays where, all right, Anthony Bradford is spun the wrong way, Tomlinson spun the wrong way, Connor Williams is spun the wrong way. You know, it just was a really, really rough day when it could have been a lot better. And it was in a lot of instances, it looked like guys just losing matchups one on one. And the pass pro was not great, but I thought actually it was better than the run blocking, minus like a couple obvious snaps, like Charles just getting beat by a D tackle. That shit. We talked about that in the post game show, and I went back and saw it on tape. I was like, yep, just as bad as I thought. Just as bad as I thought. But where I really think the run game is going to be an issue, and why I wanted to make it my one big thing, is that Ken requires run blocking. Ken Walker, that is. He requires run blocking, but I don't think he requires as good a run blocking, if that makes sense, because he's just such a make something out of nothing guy. Reverse course, jump from one gap to the other. And Zach is not really that. You know, if Zach Charbonnet has to start for him again in Detroit or against anybody else going forward, he's not really that. And that's not like a slight to him. He's a different style of runner. He goes forward. He can jump cut and stuff like that and stiff arm, but he's more so going to follow the blocking or lack thereof. You know, not just going to turn like a poorly blocked play, reverse field. Now it's a 12-yard game. So he needs the better blocking. And right now, Chris, I think he's like one of the worst. This is not a Zach stat as much as an O-line stat, but in terms of yards before contact, like the Seahawks are one of the worst teams in the league. Let's see, I got that in my notes somewhere. The Seahawks right now, just on running back carries in general, 27th in rush EPA, 21st in rushing yards, 27th in yards before contact. You know, this is just on running back carries, so nothing to like LaVisca or no Geno scrambles. Just when you design a run to your running backs, 27th in yards before contact. Like conversely, I think the Lions are like one of the best in the league and all that stuff. You know, like they have a really good run game with a two-headed monster, and their O-line moves people off the ball, and you could see it on film, and then it's reflected in their numbers as well. That's the stat. And that stat's not totally on the O-line, but I would say it's more on the O-line than the running backs. That yards before contact number, I'm going to be watching that all year. It might be one of those that I just cite after every game or on every midweek pod every time we talk about the offense or running back or something. Because my one big thing in week one was that Ken Walker needed to be the guy, because you can just see the impact that he has when the run game is clicking. It all opens up, you know. I think we had a question on our post-game show where someone asked about going tempo, or maybe it was in a comment on one of my stories, but you can see it, and Chris, you can see it in real time too. It's like when they get in that tempo, go empty. It's like boom, here's Jackson for 7. Boom, here's Noah for 11. Boom, here's Tyler for 7 more. Boom, 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 boom. Next thing you know, they scored, right? But they can't get into that tempo stuff if their first down run is called back for holding. They can't get into tempo if it's 1st and 20. Can't get into tempo if it's 2nd and 12 because he done lost 2 yards because your guard lost his rep. You know, you can't do that if you lose your block in the end zone and you get hit for a safety, you know, like you did in week one. Those first down runs are so important to everything that they want to do. Let me see. I looked up the Seahawks success rate on first down. It was really awful. Let me look at it again. Seahawks on first down, the success rate, 27th. Basically, they're one of the worst 5 or 6 run teams in the league. And the Miami game really brought that to life. I know they got this together later, which is good. You know, they got first downs. They were able to move some guys off the ball later in the game, which is very positive against a run defense in Miami that hadn't been good in the first 2 weeks. That was positive. Chris, Detroit has one of the better run defenses in the league right now. It's a really good run defense. They're moving guys off the ball. They're flying to the ball. They are dinged up. We'll ask Colton a little bit about that in the next part of the show. But they're going to have to run the ball to beat the Lions. You have to run the ball to beat anybody. You know, but this is one of those like, all right, you almost read and listen to all the players after some games and be like, yeah, we still haven't put together a complete game yet. Okay, cool. You probably haven't. Do it on Monday. And to do that, you're going to have to run that pill. Guys are going to have to win their one-on-ones. And the thing is, when it happens, it's so obvious too. Like, I'm not even saying anything I didn't see in real time, but the film really bears that out. You look at Zach Charbonnet's first touchdown run, for instance. Connor Williams just knocks Jordan Brooks 3 yards off the damn screen, it looked like. Maybe not off the screen, but you get the point. It looked like in Infinity War, where they're all running at Thanos at the end, and he just starts freezing them and throwing them. At the end of the movie, it looked just like that, almost like when Zach Charbonnet just bowled through that Carolina Panthers safety last season. Connor just lifts Jordan Brooks, and then Zach just has a damn near clear path into the end zone. You look at Zach Charbonnet's second touchdown run on on Sunday. That's also what it's supposed to look like. You see Anthony Bradford winning his block. You see Stone Forsythe winning his block, and it gives just enough of a crease for Zach to get there, and then Zach's going to do the rest. That was the other thing that stood out, the last point on the run game with my one big thing is that the way teams are playing Seattle with nickel, four-man fronts, light boxes, safeties too high, what that does is if you can get Zach to the second level, chances are he's going to be against an undersized linebacker, a nickel, or a safety. I will take Zach Charbonnet in those instances, but you got to spring him there. That was the thing. They just couldn't get him there. And the times that they did, you've seen what could happen. Zach's not like a Blazer. He's probably not going to hit a 60-yard touchdown run, but he can get you 16, 17, maybe even 20 if you just get him against one-on-one with the nickel. Get him one-on-one with the safety. And some of this is a moot point. If Ken plays on Monday, I don't know if he will. But even if Ken plays, he still needs to block him. You don't want Ken back there dancing. We saw that Ken's rookie year, where he was one of the worst running backs in the league in terms of avoiding runs for zero gain or negative yardage. He was one of the worst. It was like him and somebody from the Jets. And that year, you don't want to be near anyone on the Jets offensively. Their offense was boo-boo or booty cheeks, to borrow a phrase from Chris. You don't want to be the Jets. So you want to give Ken those lanes, because when Ken has those lanes, boy, first and 10 from the 30 can be a touchdown. Ken is the DK of the ground game. Anytime he touches the ball, he can score. So, the run game was kind of concerning. And I said O-line to start this, but really you can just kind of apply that to everybody. Tight ends, the receivers. The receivers are a big part of the run game because the Seahawks don't use a fullback. So when the other team's in nickel, sometimes that key block will be Jackson. Sometimes it will be DK. Sometimes it will be Tyler. If they reach the nickel or reach the safety, that's the difference between a touchdown and not. Remember, Chris, in week 1, DK got called for holding. I think that negated a touchdown. I think in the second half, Ken Walker touchdown, because sometimes those guys downfield are the difference between, or not even downfield, just at that second level, are the difference between 2nd and 5 and 1st and 15. And that's a huge difference for this offense, going back to the tempo point I made. So that really stood out. I'm sorry, I can't close this with a solution, because I feel like I posed one last time of changing the point of contact, not just relying on your guards. They tried that and it was like, damn, that didn't work either. So honestly, I think sometimes football just comes to this. This is my solution. I'll try this one. Sometimes football just comes to, are you going to move the guy in front of you off the rock? Do you want it more than that guy? Sometimes football is just that simple. You got X's and O's, you got schemes, you got misdirection. Sometimes it's just, hey man, you see that cat in front of you? Move him. All right, ready, break. That's the play call. So I think that's got to be the mindset all week. And if the execution follows that mindset, they should have a decent time in Detroit. I'll save my prediction for when we get Colton on, but that's going to be the key for me. I think back to what Bruce Irvin said. I think it was in the 2022 season, talking about the run defense. He had made a couple plays, and we were interviewing him after the game, and he was just like, it really is as simple as, I'm not going to let nobody whip me in front of my kids. My kids they're old enough to watch these games. They ain't about to see their daddy get beat up on by no other dude. That's how everybody's got to approach it in the run game for Seattle. Whether it's your mama, your girl, your wife, your uncle, your granddaddy, whoever, everybody's going to be watching Monday Night Football. It's on ABC, so everybody got that channel in the age of streaming. Everybody gonna be watching. So since everybody watching, move the guy in front of you, because it wasn't happening consistently. And when they're not moving guys off the ball consistently in the run game, it's toast. They can lose to anybody. And Chris, I feel like this game, as we'll talk about with Colton, it feels like it's big game. You know what I mean? The Seahawks are kind of of the two teams remaining undefeated in the NFC, Minnesota and Seattle. It feels like Sam Darnold and the Vikings are getting a lot of love, justifiably so. They beat up on Houston and beat the Niners. The Seahawks are going under the radar a little bit. They can move the needle on Monday with a win, but to do that, they're gonna have to run that pill, because the Lions are gonna run that ball successfully, probably. And if the Seahawks don't, it won't be a shootout like it's been in the past. Lions defense is too good for that right now. So yeah, man. One big thing this week, run that pill and move guys off the ball. It's that simple. There's no tricky stuff. No got to do a bunch of misdirection. Don't listen to Chris. Don't run screens. Move guys off the. Yeah, I got that in there. I had to. Move guys off the ball. They do that. They got the guys that do it too. I don't think anybody on the team is a bad run blocker too. So that's the other frustrating part. They got 5 good run blockers in my at least up front and good blocking receivers. They just got to do it, and they didn't do it consistently against Miami. You do that against a good team, you'll lose on Monday night.
Well, thanks for throwing a little shade my way, but yeah, there it is. One big thing.
No screens, baby. Ban screen passes, baby.
Mike did come up with a solution to try to help. We talked about it. So, you guys know where I'm going with it. Never give up. All right. Never surrender. Don't wave that white flag. Mike talked about moving guys out the way. How about this, man? You guys execute that screen perfectly. All right. You come out. You let the lineman in, the D lineman rush in. You get out there athletically and you go find you a 250-pound linebacker. You go find you a safety. You go find a little nickel and corner and you lay them out and you clear the way for a JSN, for a Zach, or a Ken Walker. All right.
Yeah, hopefully Ken's back, man. They really need Ken. That was my other takeaway. They really need Ken in this game.
Yeah, they're not gonna. You need your team as healthy as can be, but it's football. You hope Ken's healthy. If he's not, Zach Charbonnet steps up. Maybe Kenny McIntosh gets more snaps. We'll see how that goes. But that was our one big thing. I want to thank you guys for checking that out. Coming up now, we'll have Colton Pouncy of The Athletic covers the Detroit Lions. We'll talk offense with the Lions versus the Seahawks defense and vice versa. Seahawks defense against that Lions offense, as Mike mentioned, they are going to run the football. We've seen it. We know it. It's going to be a very physical game. We thought the first 3 games were physical. Boy, this game about to get real violent. So stay tuned. Here we go. Our conversation with Colton Pouncy of The Athletic coming up right now.
And without further ado, we have the homie Colton Pouncy, who covers the Lions, does a great job covering the Lions, by the way, for The Athletic. Also host of Welcome to Detroit. Make sure you guys check out his podcast. Wherever you're listening to this or watching this, their podcast, Welcome to Detroit, is available, I'm sure. Make sure you subscribe to their Patreon as well. Colton is the best in the biz. He's a winner of the Therese Emerging Writer Award, killing it. Colton, what's going on, man? How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. It's weird because it's like 3 weeks in the season. I'm already tired. The Lions got a bye week after the Seahawks game, so I'm gonna need it. But no, it's been fun to have football back, man. Yeah, having a good time over here.
And you covering the team with expectations now. That's why, man.
It's a little different.
Actually, let's get in that real quick. How is that covering a Lions team that expects to be a contender? I can't believe I just said that, by the way.
Yeah, it's a major difference. Even last year, like a lot of people picked them to, win the division, but that was like pretty much the extent of it. No one really thought they would make to the NFC Championship game, have all these wins along the way. So really coming into this year, they're thinking Super Bowl contender. We're up at that upper echelon of the league now. We expect to contend and compete into February. So like the fan base, I think, is still adjusting to that. This is the fan base that, used to wear paper bags over their faces during the 0-16 season. So I think they're still learning how to
ask.
They do. Yeah. I think now they're just learning how to have expectations and, not get too high, not get too low. I think that's kind of like, what they're still working on early in the season. Because, they did lose a game week 2. It's kind of the end of the world. Sky's falling and they, win. They bounced back and get a win last week and feeling pretty good again. So I think, just managing those expectations, not getting too high, not too low is what they're still dealing with. But in terms of covering the team, it's been fun. And, they do look like a contender in my eyes.
Yeah, and even after reading all the coverage, yours included from the Arizona win, I could just feel the dissatisfaction on the part of the team. They felt, I can tell they probably felt like they should have went in there and kicked Arizona's ass. Instead, they got shut out offensively in the second half.
Yeah, it's weird because they're 2-1. Most teams would take that, but they don't feel like they've played their best game yet. Especially Arizona, I think, was more of a return to what we've seen from them. They decided to run the ball. I think the first drive they ran it 6 out of 8 plays or something like that. And they really wanted to kind of establish the run in a game like that against a physical Arizona team. They scored 20 points in the first half. Jared Goff was 12 of 12 to start the game. Defense was balling out. So it really looked like a complete team, the team that they've been talking up all offseason, really. Then they had some hiccups in the second half where they probably weren't, too satisfied. They thought they could have pulled away in a game like that. Probably got up like 3 scores, only win by 7. So I think they have those expectations for themselves where they expect to pull away. They expect to have these big leads after, the fourth quarter, the game ends. But they haven't been able to put it together yet. So I think that's kind of where they're at right now.
And specifically haven't really put it together like they would want to on offense. Not even just like they would want to have, as we would expect, coming into this season. Neither Geno or Goff really. They've been lighting it up in this matchup. Neither one of them lightened it up so far. Not throwing a lot of touchdowns. They've both thrown more picks than you would expect through 3 games. I think Goff's already thrown 4. Geno's thrown 3. Goff not putting up the numbers outside of just raw passing numbers. He's got a lot of yards, threw for a lot of yards in that Bucks game. In particular, what's up with Goff in this offense? What are you seeing?
Yeah, it just they haven't looked right. And I think you could attribute that to a few things. Josh Reynolds was a key piece in this offense last year. He's had chemistry with Goff dating back to their days in LA. He's in Denver now. So that's really a security blanket that's no longer around. You're working in a guy like Jameson Williams, who has all the talent in the world, but, I think there's working some timing and chemistry issues there. In week 2, especially against the Bucks, their red zone offense was pretty abysmal. I think they went like 1 of 7 in the red zone. And that's after putting up 463 yards of offense. So it's like they're getting the yards. It's just they can't finish when they get close. That's kind of been an issue for them early to start the season. So they feel like they're pretty close. They're getting there. And they still trust in the weapons they have with Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. It's just about incorporating all their pieces and getting them all to play as one. I think that's been the biggest issue. And then Goff, he hasn't gotten off to the best start here. I think he's felt some interior pressure. I think, the Lions are working new pieces along the offensive line. They added Kevin Zeitler, right guard from the Baltimore Ravens. That moved Graham Glasgow over to left guard instead of right guard where he played last year. So I think they're, still working some things out. Those guys didn't play in the preseason. It's still kind of some rust that they're shaking off. But they do think in due time they'll get back to where they were last year.
You could see some of that interior pressure getting to Goff a little bit, particularly in the Bucks game. He threw that pick just right, guy right in his face, lets it fly smooth over the middle, hits that DB right in the stomach. Goff usually protects the ball really well, but there's only so much you can do with the fat guy, in your face like that. This is my favorite stat coming into this. It was like it's not totally force meets the immovable object thing, but it is interesting. The Seahawks are number 1 in pressure rate, or number 2, I think, in the league. But Goff is like one of the best guys at avoiding sacks, 4th lowest sack rate in league right now. And my new favorite stat that I've been using this year, pressure to sack ratio. So how often you're sacked, how often the pressure is turned into sacks. Goff's been one of the best in the league. He is 3rd right now. I think Lamar and Bo Nix might be ahead of him, Josh Allen and Bo Nix. So you can get around, you can get him, but you can't get him on the ground. So that's a good stalemate here that I want people to pay attention to this week. But something you also just talked about is that run game. And I forget who it was, maybe Decker, I think, who was talking about going into the game. They were like, yo, it was kind of like how I treat my daughter with like, all right, you can have this. You got to do this first, then you can get rewarded with the second thing. It was more like, yo, y'all get 4 yards on first down and we'll just keep running it. But you got to get those positive yards. And as you mentioned, they ran it down Arizona's throat. Lions 2nd in EPA per rush right now on running back carries. Number 1 in success rate on running back carries, top 10 in first down rate. So the question I have, it's kind of interesting. Lions also top 5 run defense too in a lot of categories. Are the Lions becoming like a ground and pound team right before our eyes? It kind of feels like that early on.
I almost feel like they've always been that. That's always what Dan Campbell's, philosophy identity is wanted to be offensively. He comes from that New Orleans system where they had Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, the 2-back system, and he wanted to kind of implement that here in Detroit. So I think what's hurt them a little bit offensively this year is when they've gotten away from the run game for too long. In week 1 against the Rams, Dave Montgomery had a carry with, I think, 12:03 left in the 3rd quarter, and his next carry didn't come again until overtime. And that's really unacceptable for a guy like that you depend on to move the chains and get those tough yards on the ground. So that's kind of really been a theme to start the year, but I think there have been moments where they especially want to get back to the run game against the Cardinals. They kind of got away from it from the Bucks. They have a really stout defense over there in Tampa. So I think they want to reestablish the run against the Cardinals and say, like, look, we got 2 of the best running backs in the league, arguably the best running back duo. Let's just do what we do best. We'll control the clock. get those tough yards in the ground, and then we'll use that to set up the pass and give Jared Goff some success. So I think that's really what they try to do in Arizona. We'll see if they can keep it up. But I do think, like, in a perfect world for Dan Campbell, that's his preferred, style of offense.
You mentioned the strong run game, but Jameson Williams, man, speed. This dude is a vertical threat. And the Seahawks haven't faced that this year with a competent quarterback. Unfortunately, last week against the Dolphins, they had the backup Skyler, and he just got his ass beat for 3 quarters. He didn't even make it to finish the game.
Like
they beat him so bad. Yeah, so
that was bad.
exactly. And Jared Goff he plays really well against the Seahawks. It might come down to one negative play that the Seahawks can make against him, and that seals the deal. So how much of a challenge can Jameson Williams, if the running game is running, if they're handling business, how much of a challenge could he present to the Seahawks defense, especially with these new DBs and Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen handling business so far this season?
Yeah, the Lions usually try to get JMO at least a couple of deep shots a game. They know that he's their best deep downfield threat. We saw all training camp, he was beating their own DBs downfield and getting loose down there. So I think they're eager to deploy him against, other teams that they'll face this season. So I definitely think they'll try to give him the ball. Last week was a little bit tougher to kind of do against the Cardinals. For whatever reason, they were, again, trying to run the ball a little bit more. Didn't really have those deep shots for JMO, but I imagine Ben Johnson will try to dial something up for him this week, just because they're going to need explosive plays against a tough Seattle defense. And that's a defense, Mike McDonald in Baltimore gave them some issues last year. I think they lost that game 38-6, something like that. So, you're going to have to hit some explosives and try to keep the chains moving if you can. But if not, definitely need to connect on some of those and then capitalize when you get in the red zone. So I definitely think Jamin will be a big factor this week if they can try to get him involved.
Another featured guy is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He loves playing against the Seahawks. He's had over last 2 games they played, he's had over 100 yards and a tug. So he's definitely, I think, going to be in a good spotlight to go up against Devin Witherspoon and whoever else the Seahawks throw at him. But so far this season, he's league high 18 targets while aligned in the slot this season, totaling 11 catches for 106 yards. How have you seen the execution of what J-Mo brings and allowing Amon-Ra to do what he does best, which is a lot of his work is in the slot?
Yeah, they really do complement each other well. Saint does a lot of the dirty work over the middle with these crossers, slants, working from the slot, especially like you mentioned, a little bit more this year than even last year. I think last year's more of a 50-50 split from slot and outside. And then J-Mo doing his thing on the outside and getting loose downfield. I think a lot of times they'll just use J-Mo to run off the secondary, and safeties will follow him. You get 2 guys on J-Mo, that opens up stuff underneath for Saint and even Sam Laporta, who they haven't really worked in yet a ton. But those guys, I think, with J-Mo and Saint and Laporta, when they're all right and getting the ball consistently, I think it'll be a pretty fun offense to watch. But right now, it's usually been J-Mo had a big week 1, Saint had a big week 2, so they've kind of been passing the torch a little bit here. I think their ideal style of offense would be to get all 3 of those guys involved at the same time. That's just been a little tough with some injuries to Laporta and just some chemistry issues early on, but I think they'll get that worked out.
Sometimes as we get into when we do draft stuff, that's kind of our jobs a year round now. And sometimes you get like draft darling and you just want to see guys succeed. One of my guys is J-Mo. When he hit, I think it was Trey White with the double move in week 1. I was just like, there it is. I felt like a proud pops. I was like, yo.
You and the whole city of Detroit.
Yeah, that was that. I was like, there it is. There's just somebody text me the clip because I wasn't watching the game. And it was like, yeah, it's time for Trey White to call it quits. I was like, nah, man. J-Mo's gonna do that to a lot of people. It ain't just Trey White. Like that is next level speed. Like if we get a play this week where it's him downfield against Tariq Woolen, it might be like the fastest cornerback and receiver matchup in the league. Like that is just real speed on speed. I'm hoping. Ben Johnson, you listening? Come on, man. Just give us one. Like Colton said, usually give at least 1 or 2 deep shots a game. Come on, don't be afraid. Let J-Mo see if he can run by Reek. I would love to see that. That's my selfish hope for this game on Monday night.
Whenever they get those one-on-one matchups, they usually try to dial it up for J-Mo. They hit one against the Bucs for I think like a gain of 50. I know Mel Kiper wants a band too high, but if they get the single high look, they're going straight to J-Mo. So that'd be fun. I would love to see that matchup between him and Woolen. That'd be fun.
Well, a matchup that Seahawks fans are not looking forward to is Aidan Hutchinson on that D line for the Detroit Lions versus this under construction Seahawk offensive line. This dude Aidan leads the league in sacks with 6.5. How many did he have against the Bucks? 4.5 or 4?
4.5.
Bazillion.
Yeah.
And then his pressure rate is at 24.3%, and he's just doing his thing. So how impressive has he been through 3 games?
Yeah, no, he's taking his game to another level. And, it's always nice when you see like the on-field play confirm what you saw in practice and training camp, because that's really what we saw all summer. This dude's beating Penei Sewell around the edge, like consistently. A very good offensive line here in Detroit consistently in training camp and the preseason. So to see him carry that over to the regular season has been a lot of fun to watch. And he's a guy that just keeps adapting, keeps adding new things to his game. The spin move, I think he added last year, but it almost looks even deadlier this year. The way he can use it to counter and set up other moves, it's really fun to watch. So, yeah, Hutch is looking like, I think, one of the best pass rushers in the league. I think he'll be in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year if the Lions defense is any good and keeps that going, what they got going right now. But, yeah, he's definitely taking his game to another level. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure if, like, this was expected when they drafted him second overall, and that's a high draft pick, but, like, he didn't really show this level at Michigan even. It was all like effort and motor that he was winning with in college. Now he's adding these pass rush moves and adding to his toolbox, each season. So it's been cool to see him adapt and, keep adding to that toolbox.
We have a way to watch film now, the NFL Pro thing, and you can click on a guy's stats and it'll give you just a playlist of all of them. And I was watching all of Aidan's pressures, and the fun part about that before we hopped on the show was that it's all chronological. So you can see how long it takes each team to start double teaming him.
Yeah.
Like it really took the Rams quite some time, longer than I would have thought, to start doubling this guy and chipping him with running backs. Even the Bucks, Baker had to get his head taken off like twice before they were like, let's put someone over there too. You can kind of see. So, I mean, if we're just assuming that OCs are listening to this, hey, Ryan Grubb, don't wait until he body slams Geno to give Stone Forsythe some help, because, like, as Colton was saying, if he's beating Penei Sewell in practice, like, you can go look at some of the dudes that Hutch has been beating up on. They are not even in the same stratosphere as Penei Sewell. I mean, it's some starters and then some backup guys, but either way, they're just not close. Like, it's so funny to see, like, this is the first chip I'm seeing. It's the fourth quarter. What took y'all so long, man? Oh man, he's killing it, man. Does he have a nickname? He's in like give this guy a nicknames category right now.
It's really Hutch. I tossed this out to Nick last week. I think like AI Aidan, because he just keeps adapting and adding to his AI Aidan. I don't know. We'll workshop it a little bit, but working on it. Man, but the funny thing is with him is, like, I have to argue with Lions fans all the time about like whether pressures are a valuable stat or not.
Oh, boy.
I do this at least like twice a year.
I love that bit. I love it, by the way. I love it.
Yeah, it's not a bit though. I'm just mad at them. So, like, I feel like a parent putting his kids in timeout and having a stern talking to them. But like with Hutch, last year he only had 11.5 sacks only. He really came on strong, second half of the season. But for a while, the sacks weren't really matching the pressures. And so I had to tell people, like, hey man, a pressure can affect a play. It can lead to a throwaway, get you off the field. Like, that matters. But the issue was with the Lions, especially last year, Hutch would get a pressure and move the quarterback off a spot, but like they didn't have anyone opposite him to keep the quarterback in the pocket. So he would just, step up, go on the run, throw it downfield, and make a play. And then somehow Lions fans decide to blame that on Hutch when he's the only one getting back there and actually affecting the play. So what you're seeing now is a defensive line that added DJ Reader from the Bengals, who's just a space-eating nose tackle up there. Marcus Davenport, they signed him to kind of be the bull rush guy on the other edge. He actually just hurt his elbow. He's out for the season now, so that's unfortunate. But they do have another guy, Levi Onwuzurike, who's, I think, he's a Washington kid, I believe. Played over there in college. And, that he's been awesome, really. I think he has 13 pressures in 3 games. So he's kind of stepped up and helped Hutch out. So really you're seeing more of a complete Lions defensive line that's leading to Hutch getting these numbers that he's getting.
Let's drop back into the DB room, because y'all took Terrion Arnold out of Alabama 24th overall. Boy, has he had a gauntlet of receivers, man, to start the season. You go up against Puka and Kupp. That ain't easy work. Then you got Godwoods and Evans. That's another challenge. Then you go up against arguably the best receiver in the class for 2024, Marvin Harrison Jr. How would you assess his play so far this season? And, well, actually, we'll just start there. How would you assess his play so far this season?
I think he's been pretty solid. The one issue with him is he's gotten a lot of flags. And some of those are just like still adjusting to the NFL type of flags. Like if you get your head around, that's not a flag. I think he's gotten like a couple of those. Maybe some light contact that they wouldn't call in college or at Alabama, but they're definitely going to call in the NFL. So you got to be more mindful of that. But other than that, I think he's been pretty sticky in coverage. He's, I think he's affected quarterbacks and, making them second guess looking their way. I don't think he's given up a ton of yards after the catch. Week 1, he went up against Cooper Kupp, and after the game, Cooper went up to him and was like, "You're one of them ones. Like, you're going to be a good player in this league." So I think that told you all you need to know. If a guy like Cooper Kupp, an All-Pro, saying that about a rookie in his first NFL game, that he saw something in him that made him want to say that to him. I think Terrion, he had a good battle against Marvin Harrison even last week. I think Marvin got him a few times in the first half, but really in the second half, I thought Terrion kind of won that matchup. So he's a guy that they love coming out of the draft. They trade up to get him. He fits their mindset in terms of a cornerback with a quick memory that has all the confidence in the world. I think he's a perfect fit in Aaron Glenn's system, and they're happy to have him.
Now, how is Aaron Glenn going to go ahead, Mike?
No, so this isn't a question, but there are there's a few phrases that really just mean the world in football. Like if you say somebody is like that, or I see you, or he's one of them. It's just a few of them lines that's just like the utmost confident in the world. Like it's so simple, but it's like, yo, I see you, big dog. That means everything.
That's all you need. Yeah. I'm sure that meant the world to him too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see you. He wanted them, or he liked that. Like all them simple slang. Like you say something like that to somebody, they mean that. They're not just BSing you. So yeah, Kupp saying that to him, that's the real deal.
Yep, no doubt.
How do you envision Aaron Glenn looking to slow down the three-headed monster of DK, JSN, and Tyler Lockett, who have had some success this season of throwing the rock around? It should be a fun match because I know Glenn, he ain't afraid to go man up and blitz the hell out of you. I know their blitz rate is a little down as it was last year, but it's only 3 weeks in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, he hasn't been able to stop them the last couple of years, even though he's tried. I think part of that has been like, I don't want to call him stubborn. I think he believes in the system so much, which is high blitz rate, heavy man coverage. He just hasn't had the pieces to play that style that really lasts since he's gotten to Detroit, honestly. But this year you go out and you add a Carlton Davis who literally is built to play man coverage in the NFL. I think he's been really solid to start the year. Terrion, like we mentioned, he's one of those other guys that's built that same way. Amik Robertson, he plays a nickel spot. He's definitely a competitor inside, and we'll battle it out. So I think they feel good about their secondary. It's just they got to go out and do it. It's still early in the season. I think they like where they're at right now, but they're going to face another big test here this week against a trio of really talented receivers that really has given them problems over the years.
And shout out to the Lions just in the last couple of years, man, for some patience. I mean, I feel like you guys, I think, what was it? The owner had to basically come and like re-endorse Dan. What was that? 2021, right? His first year?
2022, I believe. They started off 1-5, and Sheila came out and said, "This is a process. We fully believe in them. Like, calm down."
And like even Aaron Glenn, I feel like his name was under some scrutiny there. Maybe it was just because of the last couple Seahawks games, he getting torched. But credit to Dan believing in him, turning that around. And at a time where coordinators can get just booted after a season sometimes, or coaches can get booted early. It seems like those two instances of patience have really paid off for the franchise so far.
No doubt. And Dan's never really talked about that, but I'm sure that meant the world to him at the time. Sheila coming out and just lending that confidence publicly. And then, him and Aaron Glenn, that's his guy. They're, that's his right-hand man. They were together in New Orleans, brought him over. That was the first hire he made in Detroit, I believe. So really him and Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, like the fact they're all still here, you don't really see that continuity that much in the NFL, but it's setting up to where, if they do have a special ending here, I think you can point to that coaching staff continuity as one of the reasons why.
Patience. NFL teams, sometimes you need some patience and give guys the horses, particularly on D. Like you can't just can't scheme around bad corners. You just
they've tried the last couple of years. It has not worked.
It does not work. All right, it's prediction time. Chris, we want to start with the record, not the record. Prediction with the game, or we want to do over-unders first?
Let's see who Colton gonna pick to win this game. Let's see what he got.
All right, give us the spread first before we have Colton pick.
Okay, fair enough. So right now the Lions are favored -3.5, which I'm not too surprised by. Seahawks going on the road. This is their toughest opponent so far this season. So Colton, who wins the game on Monday Night Football, man? Do the Seahawks come out and surprise the world, or do the Lions handle business at home?
You know, if the Lions were a bit healthier, I feel like this might be the year that I would pick them. I don't think I've picked them yet against the Seahawks.
And you've been right both times.
Yeah. But I look at just all the injuries they have right now. You know, Marcus Davenport's out for the year. Ali McNeil, one of the stud defensive tackles, he's dealing with a shoulder injury. Sam Laporta's got an ankle injury. Brian Branch is in concussion protocol. Frank Ragnow, their all-pro center, is dealing with, I believe, a torn pec, so he might miss this game. So they just really piled up against Arizona, and I don't think this is the same Lions team that, you know, definitely started the year. So that being said, and knowing, you know, this defense, same style of defense has given the Lions issues over the years. I would pick the Seahawks to win. Get the upset on Monday night. We want to go score right now or what?
Yes, give us a score. Give us a score.
Yes, sir.
This is my first time thinking about it, so give me a sec here.
All right.
It's all good.
I would go Seahawks 27, Lions 21.
Ooh, I like it. All right, writing that down. All right, our beat writers have been doing pretty good. They're 3-0 straight up, Chris. I got that right.
Yep.
And then 2-1 against the spread. So we're doing good there. Yeah, both teams. By the time this show comes out, it'll come out Wednesday morning. The first injury report for both of these teams is going to look like a Costco receipt. Like both of these teams are very banged up right now. This is the depth game. And then which stars can overcome the backups being in. I feel like there's a lot of key players. You mentioned all the ones on the Lions. On the Seahawks, you got Byron Murphy, their top pick. He hurt. Leonard Williams, he hurt. Ken Walker the third, he hurt. Like a lot of injured guys. Yeah,
I didn't think about that.
You might want to be
both teams got a lot of banged up guys, and that's not including anyone who got hurt on Sunday against the Dolphins, and we don't know yet because they ain't practiced. Like I said, that first injury report, both teams might be like, "Oh, we're screwed." It's gonna be overreaction Thursday on that. We got that written down. Colton's picking Seahawks 27, Lions 21.
Let's go with it.
I feel like we probably should have told Colton that the Seahawks have some injuries because that might have swayed his answer. But it's okay, Colton. It's all good. You would be wrong for the first time in 2 years. It's okay.
For sure.
Yeah, it's all right. We're gonna do 2 over-unders this week. One of them just popped into my head from watching film. So the first over-under is 1.5 trick plays for the Lions. And with that, we're going to include an onside kick or any other special teams trick plays. So a fake field goal, fake punt is included in that as well, in addition to any flea flickers. And if anything that goes to a lineman intentionally as well falls in this category. Any lineman catches or anything. Over-under is at 1.5. Going over or under 1.5 trick plays by the Detroit Lions on Monday night.
I'd actually take the under only because they already used the fake punt. They had Jack Fox complete a pass against the Bucks, I believe. And they already used the hook and ladder last week for a touchdown. If you want to call that trick play.
Yes, that would count as a trick play, yeah.
So I feel like they've used a few. Honestly, like in a game like this where there's so many injuries, they could dive into that bag a little more, but they've already gone to a little bit early to start the year. So I feel like I'll take the under on that.
All right. Got our first under. And the second one will be 1.5 sacks for AI Aidan. And before you give your prediction, I got to say, keep fighting the good fight on pressures. If you need help, I got your back.
Oh, I always need help.
If it helps too, Mike McDonald this week said that sacks are a funky stat. And he went into kind of a longer spiel about how pressure is more important. And I feel like if the Lions are going to listen to anybody who's not in Lions world, you listen to the dude who beat the Lions 38-6. Yes, like whatever he says is probably worthwhile. And for what it's worth, he beat the Seahawks 37-3. So he knows a thing or two about the value of pressure versus sacks. So with that said, 1.5 sacks though for Aidan Hutchinson against the Seahawks on Monday night. You going over or under?
So how's their offensive line situation? Let me ask that first.
Boy, let me tell you. So the most pertinent issue for the Seahawks is that they're starting a third string right tackle, Stone Forsythe. He will be on the right side. Yeah. For what it's worth, I will preface that though with Stone played left tackle in the Lions game last year and Jake Curran was their third string right tackle in the game last year, and AI Hutch didn't do much in the game last year, so they were
He's better
equally
though, Mike.
dinged up. He is. I'm just throwing that out there that they were equally dinged up in last year's game against the Lions and performed quite well. So
I think I do remember that now you say it.
Yeah, they were banged up last time and they played well. They are banged up again, probably to the same extent, for what that's worth, before you make your prediction.
Yeah. What's the line again?
1.5.
1.5. I wanna. You know what? I'll take the over. I think 2. He's just feasted on backup tackles this year.
He has.
And I think he has more help than he did last year, as I mentioned earlier. So I think just knowing that, it depends how they want to use him. If they want to chip him and do some other things to stop him, then maybe that'll help. But if not, if that's not really their style, then I could see him racking up at least 2. I'll go 2.
All right. So we got an under on the trick plays, over on Aidan's stacks. I like it. I like those predictions, man. I love having Colton on the show. I mean, nobody does it better. Favorite beat writer on any team, any sport. So I'm always glad when we can have you. The floor is yours before we close the show. You got anything to plug? You can plug the podcast again. Any stories you got? Jameson Williams feature that I love that you wrote. I think that was like last week or 2 weeks ago. Plug anything. Floor is yours, Colton.
Yeah. I'll probably just plug the podcast again. I mean, just got that going. It's on Patreon. If you do subscribe, then you can listen on your preferred podcast platform called Welcome to Detroit, the one I do with co-host and co-worker Nick Baumgartner. So check that out if you want some Lions perspective. But if not, it's all good. You got a solid place to go to right here. So appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you for joining us. I will see you out there in Detroit. Thank you guys for listening to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast on audio. Thank you for anyone watching on YouTube, Seahawks Man to Man. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram at Seahawks Man to Man. Follow us on TikTok at Seahawks Man to Man. We'll catch you guys with our post-game show after, according to Colton, the Seahawks beat the Lions on Monday night. Until next time, folks. Peace.